This class is geared primarily towards men who stray, although this could apply towards women as well. But the study or the survey that I'm going to be talking about today was completed on men. So when it comes to the discussion of men who stray, it's often reasoned that, well, men are unfaithful because they want sex. But more and more social research confirms that men cheat for reasons relating to emotional validation. They seek affair partners or outside of partners, what have you, who will make them feel like their feelings are worthwhile, that their stories are worth listening to, that they are masculine. It really comes down to emotional validation. It's an ego boost, etc., driven from a lack of self-worth. So this is all an internal thing. There are multiple studies of men who went on Ashley Madison. That was a website years ago. It's not around anymore, which is probably a good thing. Well, it is a good thing. Although nowadays we just have other apps, but what have you. Anyways, it's a dating service that catered to men and women looking to have discreet affairs. After surveying a variety of the anonymous men about why they cheated or strayed, the survey found that they were indeed having affairs or hookups for attention, validation, and avoid feelings of emasculation. Many of the men felt that their feelings were being overlooked. They felt like, they felt being the main term here. Because few of them confirmed their notions with their partners. So, a lot of times you're talking to somebody and they'll say, well, I feel this or I feel that. Feelings are not facts. So just because somebody feels a certain way doesn't mean that's a fact. It's just something that they feel. So this is what they felt, was that they weren't getting emotionally validated at home, so they strayed. Their perceptions of marriage was that nothing they did was good enough. The phrase he or she is impossible to please came up over and over in this study, in this survey. However, these were, again, just feelings that they had, as the survey suggested that many of the men could not give specific examples that held much weight. Instead, it was a matter of their own perceptions. The men surveyed were very clear that they were aware that they needed a lot of validation and that their ego was extremely fragile. More than one of them said, however, much praise and validation that you think we needed, we needed so much more. After the affairs were sought, it's so much easier to be in a character rather than tapping into one's own vulnerability to let your intimate partner know that they need validation. When you stray, you can, first of all, it's an adrenaline rush. So this is why a lot of times, like when I hear from people say, well, what did they have that I didn't have? Or, people compare. You can't compare yourself to a chemical. And when people steps out of a relationship, usually it's an adrenaline rush. It's a chemical. That's number one. Anyways, men asking for validation goes against everything our society portrays of a strong man. Think about it. Men are, for the most part, supposed to be this strong, masculine, yada, yada. A lot of men are not comfortable feeling vulnerable enough to say, I need a little bit more. Now, that's not to excuse anyone for anything whatsoever, just giving you the survey results. I always say that men are just tall boys, and all boys need praise, validation, and all that comes along with building their self-esteem and self-worth. This survey was an honest investigation into the myriad reasons why men choose to stray outside their marriage and relationships. The survey shined a light on the rationalizations that men do make and what it says about the ingrained notions of masculinity. So many of the men who strayed did so because they couldn't be honest with their partners about the emotional validation that they craved. Honesty and vulnerability are crucial because you cannot get what you need if someone doesn't know what it is. It's a double-edged sword. If a male's in a relationship and they're not getting certain validation, so they decide to stray, were they ever vulnerable enough, to say, these are the things that I need? But at the same token, was there a space in a place and a platform in the relationship that allows for honesty and vulnerability, which is why I say, unfortunately, when somebody strays, they own it 100%. They own it 100%. Not unless they were held at gunpoint, it wasn't a mistake. They made a decision. Having said that, you have to evaluate what were the, did this heart attack happen to my relationship for a reason, and what is that reason? That has to be dissected. Bottom line, the broad takeaways from this survey were centered around men's feelings of emasculation. They basically described their marriages where they felt that their partner was not interested in them. They felt that their partners wanted a perfect lover, a perfect spouse, a perfect human, and that threatened their sense of masculinity. And so they sought out a partner who would boost their sense of masculinity for them. Because again, when you get on these sites or you step out, you can become a character. You're not sitting down paying bills with this person. You're not sitting down raising kids with this person. You're not sitting down crying and comforting your spouse because they lost their job or they lost a parent. It's all topical, fictitious behavior based on a character that you portrayed while the adrenaline rush is involved in this affair or hookup. So to repeat, it's all about a self-esteem boost. It's an in-the-moment self-esteem boost because following this deception is a long line of guilt and shame and negative self-talk and self-doubt, possible depression, possible self-harm, and the list goes on. So I think it's safe to say that when people think about infidelity, it's common to think about the cliched notion that, quote, all men are dogs, and all that. But emotional validation and self-esteem, according to many studies, including this one, is the basis of infidelity when it comes to men. An interesting find in this survey was that many of the straight men talked about helping, quote, helping her with chores. So it was very clear that the division of labor was that if I help her with her job, which is chores at home, if I participate in this, then, and I'm helping her with this, then I deserve something in response. If he's helping her with that, then she owes something. So not so much owed them sex, rather owed them some type of validation. So the men surveyed often said, I wanted my partner to say, thank you so much for doing the dishes or the laundry or, what have you. You did such a great job. I appreciate you so much. Again, it's that validation. It's that self-esteem boost. It's that, ego boost. The men also went on to say that they wanted their partners to listen intently to the mundane details of their day. And they wanted their partners to reward them by being enthusiastic about having sex with them. On a side note, I always say for women, sex is the price for marriage. And for men, marriage is the price for sex. Now, I don't want to paint all men and all women with that statement, but it's just a, for the most part, statement. But again, I digress. Anyway, again, this was one of the top complaints men had from the survey: the lack of praise, the lack of validation, the lack of helping them manage their emotional lives. They talk about feelings of sadness and that she or he, their partner, was too busy or too wrapped up in their own selves, their own lives, their own this or that, to take notice of their sadness, of their needs. When these men were asked if they spoke up or were honest and vulnerable, the study showed that they really didn't feel like they had the autonomy to voice their own feelings unless their partners asked about it. Again, this could be the reality of the situation or perhaps their own perception. But I will say again, that dovetails with socialization, which is the ingrained notions of masculinity and the idea of men, especially, expressing feelings is somehow wrong or emasculating. Whatever the percentage of that is true, it's not good, because we should not have a portion of the population who doesn't feel like they're not allowed to express their feelings. Again, that doesn't excuse, justify, rationalize anything whatsoever. Just stating within a relationship, there should be a platform and a space for autonomy. So what did these men want from their partners? They chose on Ashley Madison. These men often vetted their partners, actually. So it wasn't just, one of those things, or whoever will lay down, I'll lay down with you. These men actually vetted their partners very carefully. What they wanted was a woman who would say to them, you, sir, are amazing. Your wife doesn't know what she's missing out on. You're fabulous in every way. You're amazing in every way. It really wasn't, oh, just, oh, any warm body will do. It was really searching for a very specific skill set of those who are willing to offer validation and an ego boost. In the survey, men generally perceived what was happening was that their wives or partners were purposely withholding things that they needed or wanted. So it's just not I'm not getting what I want. It's you're punishing me and withholding something from me that I need. It's a small clarification, but a crucial one, because in their mind, it's she purposely is setting out to hurt me by not asking me about my sadness or my needs, by not praising me about the things that I do, by acting as though I'm a disappointment, by not being enthusiastic about having sex with me. The men often made it out as an intentional act rather than their partners simply just not understanding their needs. How different might these relationships be if these men felt that they could just say, hey, I'm really sad, or hey, I'm feeling kind of bad about myself. I need a little bit more from you today, because in reality, partners often don't know anything is wrong. And if they do, they may not understand the gravity of it unless it's told to them. Keep in mind, I'm talking about lack of emotional validation within a relationship. This has nothing to do with addiction. So, if anybody watching this is dealing with, their spouse with porn addiction, sex addiction, all this other stuff, that's not what I'm talking about. This is more of the emotional validation stuff. Now, just to be fair, I want to quickly cover some of the survey results from a similar study, only from the women on Ashley Madison. The women, and again, this is just the study, might not apply to you or anybody watching. The women on the study were extremely pragmatic. It was just not really about sentimentality. They didn't really have any illusions about the affair partner. They would openly say, I was single. I would never date a guy like this. I would never marry a guy like this. This guy can't hold a candle to my husband or my partner. They often they often really had positive, productive, healthy relationships they were currently in. They just needed something physical, some more physical touch, or different types of physical touch. Their concerns were more about the physical aspects of the affair, and they made the very practical decision to outsource this aspect of their relationship in the same way one might hire a plumber to come by and fix something. This actually, when I was reading this study, it reminds me of the 90s song by Heart, All I Want to Do Is Make Love to You. I don't know if anybody has heard of it. Basically, this woman was relatively happily married. Her husband gave her everything he could. He just couldn't have kids, and so she went out and she hooked up with somebody so she can get pregnant. So it was there's a very specific reason that she did that. Anyway, the conclusion of the survey was that women were largely outsourcing while men were trying to outsource the emotional aspect of a marriage, almost the opposite of what society thinks overall. And what is absolutely key and crucial in preventing a lot of affairs is honesty, vulnerability, and a space for both. So that was the survey that I read on the dating website of Ashley Madison, and how men and women are different from affairs. Again, none of this class was to justify, excuse, or rationalize, because there's none, period, end of story. But hopefully just to get you to understand a little bit more of the reason men stray. It's not because, somebody had bigger boobs or somebody had, better lips. It's that emotional validation. And like I said, all men are tall boys. All little boys need validation. Men need the same.